Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today joining me is NETX5. Today I'm continuing on my director retrospective series focusing on Paul Thomas Anderson, and we're looking at his film The Master. This stars Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams and Laura Dern. And for those who haven't seen it, it looks at Freddie Quill, played by Joaquin Phoenix, a naval veteran returning back from World War II, who sort of feels is a bit lost and can't sort of find his way. And he sort of has a series of breakdowns, I guess you could say. And ultimately he stumbles upon a group called The Cause, and he becomes friends with the charismatic leader, Lancaster Dodd, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it's through a variety of exercises, Dodd teaches Quill how to deal with his emotions and let go of things and sort of move forward, and really focuses on the bond that forms between these two men. Look, I'm a big fan of this. I like, as you've noticed with the other videos, I'm a big fan of P.T Anderson. I think he's brilliant. I like the films he creates, the characters he creates, the worlds that the characters inhabit. The story's always kind of simple but sort of realistic and relatable in many ways. And this is a great example of that. But what really holds this together, in my opinion, is the acting, especially from Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman. They're both interesting characters, and the way that they go about their sort of craft is interesting to watch. And the scenes with these two actors together is just fantastic. I like the feel and the look of this film, and I really feel like P.T Anderson can create this world that feels real to the audience, I guess. So what did you think of The Master?
This is one of my favorite films. This is easily in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. When I first saw this film, I was caught by its elegance and I was just sucked into it. I love the characters, I love the story, and like with most Paul Thomas Anderson films, because like he's my favorite director, I can sometimes see elements of the characters in myself. Because in The Master, the main character, Freddie Quill, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is a lost soul trying to find purpose in his life. And he goes through all these different ventures and nothing's working out. And then he comes across this group of people that like he can see himself be a part of and be a part of something bigger than himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with all those points you made. It is brilliant. And it's another example of Paul Thomas Anderson tends to do these sort of things about, you know, lost characters as well, but it looks at sort of love and relationships and finding happiness in a way. And that's what Freddie Quill, to me, is trying to find in this. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's still searching as well. He's trying to leave something behind, but he's also looking for love and acceptance as well. And I think that's great themes and ideas that P.T Anderson has in his movies. Yeah. I like the music in this. I just think that there isn't really a filmmakers out there too much like P.T Anderson. Like, his films to me isn't gauged by how much money they make. It's about the stories he tells and what he has to say.
Yeah, unlike Tarantino, who's very much a stylized director, and like his films are expected to make a lot of money because audiences can accept Tarantino's films more. Yeah. With Anderson, he's a director who doesn't really make films to make a lot of money, especially not to make $100 million. He makes these very simple, grounded, and very, character-driven stories where it's about these situations that the characters go through in different time periods. I like Paul Thomas Anderson more because he goes for that realistic style that Tarantino sometimes doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. And it is different. They both came out at the same time. But yeah, P.T Anderson tends to... His stuff's always really well written and grounded and real. It sort of covers a lot of themes that I've talked about in his other films, love, loss, acceptance, moving on, regret. These sort of film deals with that as well. I sort of wanted to talk a bit about the acting, and like I mentioned in the intro, seeing Philip Seymour Hoffman, Joaquin Phoenix together in scenes is just fantastic to watch. They're so uniquely different characters as well. Like Joaquin Phoenix it reminded me a little bit of Christian Bale in The Machinist a little bit. He was a little awkward to look at. He was very skinny, and the way he held himself was kind of awkward. He talked out of the side of his mouth. And he just looked a bit seedy and a character you couldn't really trust. Yeah. But it was sort of believable in that. But because of that, I felt a bit more drawn to Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, because he just felt better to look at, I guess, and just more of a character I could sort of relate to in a way in seeking and searching and trying to leave something behind and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of get that. But yeah, it's just an interesting contrast between the characters. Joaquin Phoenix's character, Freddie, gets arrested, and he's sort of fighting with these policemen, which are obviously stuntmen. And apparently, from what I heard, that he went a bit too far with these guys, and that he sort of attacked them a little bit and hurt them, and they hurt him. It was kind of a quite aggressive thing. But that's just an example of Joaquin Phoenix just full method, I guess. He seems to just come up with things in the moment, where I feel Philip Seymour Hoffman's a bit more precise about what he wants to do. So it's just different interesting styles of acting.
Yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix, he definitely felt unrestrained, because like it almost felt like Paul Thomas Anderson was like, do whatever you want, and Joaquin Phoenix just went and used the entire space to do whatever he wanted. And like the way he acts in this movie, it almost feels like he's just doing whatever. Because especially with the opening scene, the dialogue he says and the actions he does, it feels like him just being in the moment of the character. And the scene where Freddie Quill and Lancaster Dog go to prison, and like Freddie Quill's just freaking out of this prison, and he breaks a toilet. That was Joaquin Phoenix literally breaking the toilet, because that was like an authentic prison, and like he didn't know it was going to break. He just went full method, just smashing this toilet. That's how realistic Joaquin Phoenix in this film felt.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you see in that scene you see where he first kicks the toilet, and I think he notices it breaks a bit, and then he just goes for it. And then where he gets underneath the mattress and he's flipping it with his back, and just sort of loses it. And I agree. It's like P.T. Anderson sort of allows him the space to do what he does, and that you sort of see that a bit later when he worked with him again in Inherent Vice. It's just like he allows him to do what he does, and then he captures it on film.
And why he hasn't won an Oscar? Come on.
Yeah, he's been nominated a couple of times. You'd think he'd win, because he is so good.
Especially with this film, because I feel like this is Joaquin Phoenix's best performance. Because like he's been good in other things, but this is the one I feel like he should have deserved it the most. Because it's like, this is a performance that just feels real, authentic, and like totally unrestrained. Like I said, like he's like Joaquin Phoenix just totally went with it.
Yeah, it seems like P.T. Anderson creates these characters, but the actors he chooses really bring so much to the character and breathe life into them. And I think, that's a great example. But I think the other actors are really good in it too. Like Amy Adams is really solid in that. She does a really great performance as Peggy Dodd,
There's also a couple of unknown actors at the time that definitely show how good they are. Like there's Rami Malek and Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, they're great, and I think Laura Dern's really good. She has some really great scenes, especially with Philip Seymour Hoffman, where she's starting to see little holes in his belief and what he's telling everybody, and I kind of really like that.
One of my favorite scenes is where Philip Seymour Hoffman is asking questions to Freddie Quill, and like this is probably the best acted scene I've ever seen between like two of the greatest actors ever. It's a complete stripping of the Joaquin Phoenix character, because he's like being emotionally stripped bare, because he's like, to start with, he's being, very like lying, and he's like, whatever. But then it's like, the more it goes on, the more he's, being stripped bare, and like his real self is coming out. He's admitting his faults, and like, like when he's crying, that just really struck me.
Yeah, and it's true. Yeah, he's stripping him down, and it's getting Freddie to realize things that he struggles with and he's angry about. And I think it's really, really great. And I find with Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's this great way of underplaying characters and scenes, and I think that's a great example in that scene, because he doesn't do a lot. It's more the camera's focused completely on Joaquin Phoenix in most of it, and it's just about him asking the questions and reaction from that. And that's another thing I've noticed about P.T. Anderson as well. Like the way he frames shots, a lot of it is just on the face, especially his early films, and it's very rare he does like a two-shot with two characters in it. He sort of has an interesting way of doing conversation scenes. I find with Paul Thomas Anderson, when he makes a film, he really brings on people he wants to work with, but he creates a real strong bond and friendship with these people. It's not just, I'm a director, you're an actor. It's like he creates this environment where they're all sort of friendly towards each other. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, had done so many bit parts, but this is one of very few leading roles that he did, and P.T. Anderson's really able to see an actor who hasn't done anything before or hasn't been put in a particular role and puts him in that, and I think that's a great example in this. But it's just the environment that he creates. They're all sort of friendly to each other, and it feels like it's really P.T. Anderson's, it really feels like it's his It's more about the experience of making the movie than the movie itself.
Yeah, with the locations he uses, he makes it feel very authentic because this is a period piece film set post-World War II. And in some ways, I got a vibe of a Hitchcock film because for some reason to me, the colors just stood out a lot. Because the very first shot of the movie is just the ocean and it's just beautiful blue color, just like stands out immediately. And like throughout the rest of the film, just the colors in every single shot kind of stood out. In some ways, it reminded me of Vertigo, and it also had a few thriller aspects as well, because it could be very intense sometimes.
Yeah, and I agree. There is that feeling, this underlying darkness, or this dread, or this suspense there, and it does feel like a Hitchcock. Probably because of the period it's set, the music. There's certain music that's used that creates that sort of feel too, especially when he comes back after war and he's being, like a mall sort of photographer, and just the music used there, and that one sequence where he just harasses this guy. He keeps moving the lights close and it makes him sweat and get hotter, and they get into this fight, and it's a really intense scene. But there is that feeling with the Freddie Quill character, like you're not quite sure what he's going to do. You don't know where this is going to take you, and you don't know if he's going to be a killer of some sort or do something really bad, because it just feels like that. There's a sort of sense of dread, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, speaking of the music, Johnny Greenwood composes a very, powerful and beautiful score. Because like you're saying, it feels like it's from the time period, but also at the same time it doesn't, because it feels very modern as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every choice made in this film was just great. Just the look, the feel of it, the acting, the writing.
And for me, something I noticed as well was the sound design was also very well done. Because there's this one scene where it's like a long tracking shot where Joaquin Phoenix is walking along this pier and he comes across the boat that like this organization of people is on, and you can hear the music from the boat, and then like as he's like sneaking onto the boat, it cuts to another shot and there's music that is playing on the boat from the first shot, and then as it goes into the second shot, somehow during the sound editing there's this little switch where the music actually becomes a bit more clearer. So it actually feels like a nice progression where it starts off quiet and then it slowly gets louder into the next shot.
I think that's a great example too of how the movie's really from his point of view. So what he's hearing, we hear. What he sees, we see. And we do see other scenes with the other characters, but it's really his eyes through the world. And that's a great example. We see him go from the pier to the boat, and then we hear the music change. And yeah, it's just sort of very familiar, I guess.
Yeah. The editing and the cinematography were also just spectacular. And one of the best scenes where both of these are on full effect is the scene where Freddie Quill's going through these trials, and like he's being asked to go from one wall to another, and he's being interrogated about like what color are my eyes, and being asked these questions that are very personal as well. And the editing throughout this whole scene keeps you invested in what's going on, because it knows how long to hold on to a shot and just cut to the next scene.
Yeah, I agree with that editing, and the camera work's really great. I noticed something too about his films. He really, there's a lot of shots just on their face, and it's sort of in a way drawing us in so many ways. And I noticed that that's a style that he has. It's different with Boogie Nights, because there's a movement to the camera there. There's a lot going on, a lot of sharp cuts and stuff like that. Whereas other stuff, he sort of takes his time, and when the camera's right on someone's face, it slowly draws you into the character and the story. And I think his use of camera is just fantastic. It's like he's really using it to tell a story, which not a lot of filmmakers do these days. He sort of reminds me of early Spielberg or Scorsese, where they just sort of use the camera, or Hitchcock, they use the camera to tell their story.
There's also a shot early in the film where Freddie Quill has just poisoned a guy at this plantation, and as he's on the run, there's almost like this shot from The Searchers where it's like you just see a door frame, and just as he's exiting, the shot just goes super wide, and you can see the full landscape. For me, it did feel like a tribute to like The Searchers, because as it does have a lot of those shots where there's a lot of wide shots showing the environment, especially when they're out in the desert, and its use of tracking shots as well is just superb.
Yeah, especially in that scene where we're running with him. The camera's following him and he's running on this
field, and he's going from one side to another.
And you can see he's nearly falling over each time because there's sort of mounds he has to go across. It's just that whole sequence, and even towards the end where they're out, what's it called? where they take the motorbike out.
Yeah, the salt planes.
Yeah, and they go, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character's like, see a point and drive towards it. And these guys are actually racing these things. You see them because the camera's just following them as they do it. And then obviously, Joaquin Phoenix does it and he just takes off. But just that whole sequence was great. Just the look of it, the editing, the way it was put together. It just really sort of captures that sort of what he's sort of going for. I'm trying to think of one of my favourite scenes, but there's so many.
One of my favourite scenes near the end of the film, like the whole film's been building up that Lancaster dog, like everyone in his group hates the Freddie Quill character, like despises him, but he's the only one that actually, likes him and wants to like help him. And then when we get to the final scene, like there's this whole speech where he says just like, and if we were in a different lifetime, we would be enemies. And then he says that in another lifetime, we would be enemies. And then he gives this song, which is just like, it's just haunting to say the least. Especially since this is Philip Seymour Hoffman's last collaboration with Paul Thomas Anderson. And that makes this entire scene that more haunting.
Absolutely. And I think there's many scenes, like that's the most powerful, but there are other scenes through it, especially when Philip Seymour Hoffman is singing as well in the party. And in the end of this sort of film, I think even though Freddie and Lancaster part ways, I still think Lancaster's had a real effect on Freddie. Like he's really sort of changed him a little bit in ways he doesn't even notice. Yeah,
because in the last scene, he himself is asking questions to this random woman. So he himself has been affected by like Lancaster Dodd in some way. Like he's definitely improved slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think also there's a fear with Lancaster with Freddie, and why he doesn't want him around is because I think he realizes Freddie sees Lancaster for what he is and sees that what he believes isn't quite real and true. And it's just, I think there's a fear, but there's also that whole thing with his wife, with Amy Adams' character, who really doesn't like him. And it's true, everyone gives up on him, except, Philip Seymour Hoffman gives up on him in the end, but most of the film, he doesn't give up on him. He's trying really desperately to help. It's like he sees something in him, maybe some stuff he relates to, I don't know, and he just keeps trying to help him, but most of the time he thinks it's a lost cause, but like you said, right at the end, it's sort of, he's starting to do the exercises that Lancaster showed him, and he starts to question things, and he really has changed because he doesn't, like when we first meet him, he's an alcoholic. He just drinks all the time, and there's periods through it where he stops drinking, but towards the end, it's like he doesn't drink to the excess that he had at the start of the film, so there is a real change, and there is a bit of an arc for both the characters.
Yeah, in the end, for me, this is one of my favorite films. This is a very well acted, well told, perfectly edited, perfectly shot, beautiful music. For me, it's as perfect a movie as you can get.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very strong film. Like I said, it's well put together. The acting's great, and writing and everything about it's great. I just felt with it, I didn't connect to it as much as I wanted to. In saying that, like, this film is like one of his best, even though I could respect the film he was making, and like I've been talking about, I'm slowly more and more becoming a big P.T. Anderson fan. Like, I think his movies are fantastic, and in a way it's sort of a love letter in a way to Philip Seymour Hoffman, because him and P.T. Anderson were friends and been friends for a long time, and it was sort of like the first time you get to see, I think it was the first time he got to see his friend being the lead in something. Anyway, that's all from me today. Special thanks to NETX5 for joining me for this review. So the next film I'll be reviewing after this will be Inherent Vice. And until next time, enjoy the movies.